It is hard to lead people who you just don't understand. Where you're like, well, I think this is fun, and you don't. You think this is fun, and I don't know how to set up the project well for you that way, right? Like, it's always a learning curve, and I think it's a gift to me that I understand the concept of trying to understand that. Like, I know I always need to be learning.
You're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, the host and founder of Reliant Search Group. I'm here with Kirsten Moorefield, one of the co-founders of Cloverleaf.
Hey,
Welcome.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you. I'm excited that you made your way up here.
On this snowy Friday afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing that. We were talking a little bit about your TED Talk, and it kind of got me excited about the things that you're clearly passionate about.
Yeah.
Are you just always passionate about everything?
No.
Because you got that vibe, you know?
No, I'm not passionate about diapers. There's plenty of things in life I'm not very passionate about.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I will get on a soapbox pretty easily. There's a couple of key topics that if you get me started, I'll share a lot.
Well, workplace culture is one that I care a lot about, and I know you do too.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely dive into that. We were talking before we started about hiring people with multiple, very unique skill sets.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And I paused my thought before I answered to make sure we caught that in the film here. But here's my view on that. I'm an entrepreneur who started as a one-man show.
Yeah.
Right? And a lot of businesses do start that way. A lot of services businesses in particular. You're selling yourself first, and then you kind of scale out your firm, right? Mm-hmm. In that firm, there's one person who does the marketing, the finance, the HR, the everything, the delivery of, product or service, et cetera, et cetera. So my argument to that's not a designer's job, that's a marketer's job or whatever. My argument to that is always that there are people out there who literally do all jobs that a firm requires, right? Mm-hmm. So why do we ever get to the point where we decide that one person couldn't do two jobs? That seems like a bizarre assumption. Right?
Well, I think it depends on personality and skill and level of expertise needed.
Yeah,
I did HR. You don't want me to do your HR though.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, I did it for our company to be mostly compliant as best as I could figure out. But my gosh, it was a pain in the butt and I was not good at it. But I got us far enough, right? And then there are certain roles where you just need a higher level of expertise.
True.
And there are some people who are very like myself, and I'm assuming you and most entrepreneurs who would be so bored if they were like doing the same thing over and over. And then there are some people who I don't understand, but I know that they're this way and I respect that they're this way. They want to do the same craft over and over and get better and better at it and just do what they know how to do well. True. Whereas I get bored by that. I want variety. I want to have to learn new things. I think that's fun. And then I think in a startup, what you and I were talking about is I'm looking for someone I think that they could do video editing and graphic design.
Right.
I'm confident
Two very different things, right?
You could find someone who could do both though. They're visual.
I have someone. Art. Hey, Emerson. Good job.
Exactly.
Appreciate you, man.
Exactly. And I've worked with people who are like that too. And that's kind of like, they're hard to find, but those people often, when they're reliable, when they're committed to excellence, like those are people who can really rise quickly and take on a lot more stuff.
And when you talk about deep expertise in multiple things, there's going to be a compromise, right?
Yeah.
Like I do my own bookkeeping and accounting. I probably do a pretty poor job. Like I do good enough.
I hope you don't get audited.
Right. I'm not robbing the IRS or anything, but I'm probably missing some write-offs or whatever, right? Like, I've probably got some reports that I would run that are a little bit of misinformation in there. So like, it's not going to be perfect when you multitask, anything you multitask.
When we closed one of our rounds of funding, I had always kept our board minutes and I thought that I had done everything to the book. And it turns out I did not. Like when we issued options to employees, this is super niche, but like when we did one certain legal thing, I always had the board approve it, but I didn't include like something in the minutes. Okay. And it cost us like thousands of dollars and so much obnoxious work to go through the legal fix of that. Like
I guess you do get to a point where expertise is more important than multitasking. Right?
Yeah.
Good chat.
Yeah,
Like
good
that.
chat. But I do think that people could do both. And I also think that some people, it's better to have them just do one thing, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the person. And it depends on what level of expertise you need in that craft.
Yeah, that's right. I wear a lot of hats, but some of them are more comfortable than others, right?
100%.
Some of them look better on me than others, if you will,
Yeah.
right? So
The ones with feathers look better.
right. Some hats I'd like to just put off, and it's just a matter of growing fast enough to be able to give it to somebody who's passionate about that work, right?
100%.
Which is a great segue into Cloverleaf, because there's a little bit of a like, this is what I'm passionate about aspect to what you do.
So have you ever taken Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder,
Yeah,
DISC,
I've taken a couple.
Enneagram? Right. So those assessments, businesses invest so much money into them, and the product they get is a PDF. It's a report, right? And so much good information inside of those. Most people would say, well, did you learn about yourself when you've taken any of them?
Yeah, I don't even remember which assessment it was, but I remembered I learned that I was an activator, or some word like that, that I was particularly good at inspiring people toward their objectives. And that was kind of enabling, you know what I mean? It told me like, oh, that's a valuable thing that I should keep focusing on being great at, right?
Right.
Yeah. But I don't even remember what the assessment was or.
Boom. So that you're like the perfect case study. I hear that every
Okay.
time. What you took was StrengthsFinder.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And
right. StrengthsFinder.
You got 5, maybe even your full 34 strengths, but you at least got 5. You remember one strength and one takeaway from it that was really helpful to you. It was a great, helpful epiphany. It was empowering to you, as you said. Everybody has that experience. And businesses invest $4 billion a year into those assessments. And for their employees to have one epiphany, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of money for like one epiphany.
True.
And like 99% of the information is lost. So what we did is we turned that into automated coaching. So now I would know all 5 of your strengths.
Okay.
Not I, the technology would know all of them and all of the great research and information behind them.
Okay.
And so right before I would come to meet with you to record a podcast, I could get a tip from my calendar that says, oh, hey, Kirsten, Aaron loves to talk about blah, blah, blah. Or Aaron is really good at, whatever. Or if you need to persuade Aaron, here's how you can do that. Or if you're having a conflict with Aaron, here's how to solve it. Like just tips on all of the good information behind that. And then we push that out to people in their calendar, their email, wherever they're working, their Microsoft Teams.
Okay.
And then people can also come into the app and see dashboards of groups of people and really understand the strengths, the weaknesses, how to engage people, like all of that kind of stuff. It really comes down to there's so much helpful information out there on why people do what they do and how they tick and how they can do their best work. And is this person someone who likes variety or like to be a deep expert, right? That's in a lot of psychology research.
Yeah.
But it's just buried in tons and tons of information, and we want to make it available to people.
Well, that's really interesting. Okay, my mind went like 4 different directions.
My mind goes about 1,000 on this topic, so 4
I'm
is
digesting
great.
a little bit. As a new young manager, I could have had prompts that told me the ideal way to interact with somebody
100%.
given a certain objective.
A new manager is one of our key use cases.
Interesting.
It's so hard to be a new manager because you're promoted because you're really good at your thing. You're a really good engineer. You're a really good whatever, right? And then you get rewarded for being very good at that technical skill by managing people, which is totally
Completely different skill. Yeah.
And people are hard. People are so complicated. And like they're very, very hard to understand because we innately assume a lot of people think like we do or are like us. So when they do things that are unexpected, we think, okay, that person's lazy. Okay, that person's weird. Or sometimes you're like, wow, that person's amazing. What's wrong with me that I'm not like them? It can lead to a lot of negative assumptions, either about yourself or the other people, when really it just comes down to those differences between us are part of our superpowers. And how can you better leverage those? Like as a new manager, how can you understand the different people on your team of like who's best with what work? Or when you hit this type of a problem, who's best at solving that kind of a problem? That's not about your hard skills. That's about your brain's wiring.
Yeah. Thinking about language translation or whatever. So I've worked with a lot of, English as a second language folks. What's the word for, and we'll work through that together. And we know that if there's some miscommunication, we understand one another. We have to work a little harder to get to the nuance. But it sounds like from a psychological and emotional perspective, that's what you're doing, right? You're like, this is how you digest concepts and work processes. Or whatever.
But people don't realize, we're speaking a different language.
Right.
We're all speaking English, but it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Right. But there's many versions of it, right? I'm a horrible speller. And it doesn't matter because I have spell check on everything that I spell.
Making you a worse speller.
What's the implications on EQ for tools that help you to prep and do your homework for you?
Well, it's not doing your homework for you.
Okay.
So we've gotten people who've said like, hey, could you write my email for me? And we say, no, we will never build that type of capability. We could. It's so easy today. Like it would be like an engineer for 3 days to build that. Like it would be so easy to build. But we will never do that because that takes away your application of the learning. So learning is giving you information. Development is you applying that information. EQ, emotional intelligence, is all about how do you develop yourself and how do you develop the people around you. To develop, you have to put into action. So I can say,
that's a good
not I, the
line
tool,
in the sand. I like that. Yeah.
And I didn't make that up. That's just look up the definitions, right?
Yeah.
It's in Webster's.
Right.
But if the tool tells you, well, here, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Early days of Cloverleaf, my co-founder, Darren, we raised some money, but some money is not going to last forever. And I was feeling so strapped. I was so stressed. I wasn't getting to all the things I needed to do because I had 17 jobs, right?
Yeah.
And I knew we needed to hire someone in customer success. I was managing our customers. I was managing our product. I was managing HR. I was managing our legal. I was managing a lot of things. And I just kept dropping the ball on something all day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I went to Darren and I said, hey, we need to hire in customer success. And he said, we don't have the money. And I was like, I'm stressed. I'm so stressed. And this is actually a threat to the future of our business. Like, we have to invest here. And he said, we just don't have the money. And we had that conversation a few times. And I kept talking about like basically the theoretical concept of what does this mean for our future and my feelings.
Okay.
And I was like, this guy is not listening to me. He doesn't respect me. He just, you know what I mean? Like
so you're taking it personally.
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean, the first time, no. But after like 5 times, I'm like, I'm your partner. I need you to listen to me, right? And I got a tip from my own tool. And these days, I wrote our tips too.
Interesting.
So it's
okay.
like, you can know the concept, but when and where do you apply it? So I got the tip before a meeting with Darren that said, don't persuade Darren with emotions or theories. Give him the facts. And I was like, okay, let me think back over. How have I been presenting this to him? All emotions and theories.
Well, yeah, when you were talking, the first thing I thought was, he's saying we don't have the money. You should be speaking to the money. Like, what's the financial implication of this, right?
Right,
like,
exactly.
It might be a derivative of 3 steps or whatever, but how do you get there, right?
Your emotional intelligence is so high. I wasn't there yet. I was like, he's just not listening.
I'm a matchmaker, Kirsten. That's
there
what
you
I do,
are.
right?
There you go. There you go. And so I went into the meeting with him and I was like, okay, bullet point. Here's all the things we need to accomplish in our business. Yeah? Do you agree? Anything missing? Are we good?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. And then here's the most important ones, right? Great.
Now we're in the same vehicle.
Here's what we are not getting to. What do you think we need to do? Should we stop doing some of these things we are doing? What do you think we need to do? He was like, we're doing all the right things. We just need to hire in customer success.
He told you.
Exactly. But it came down to how I was presenting the information.
Yeah.
The tool did not do that for me. It just gave me the information. I had to apply it.
Yeah.
I had to walk it out, which is the development piece, right?
Yeah.
So to your question of, hey, is this tool just going to actually lower emotional intelligence the way spell check lowers our ability to spell? No, it's just helping give you the right information. You have to choose what you're going to actually do with it.
Yeah, and it's at the right time, that aspect of it, like before we walk into a meeting with people, like, because that's 100%. When you're having conversation, collaborating, making decisions, right?
Right.
You're always influencing or exchanging critical information, right? So going into a meeting, like, it's these critical times, right? Yep. Whatever they are.
Underneath the hood, the thing that we have really cracked is using technology to understand what is your situation and therefore what is the 2-3 sentences you need to know right now in this situation, so that you can implement that action and then you truly develop. You take that learning, you put it into action, it becomes more of who you are, what you know, what you're capable of. That's it. Underneath the hood, that's it. Like, it's actually really complicated, but it comes down to those things. What do you need to know and how do we present it to you in a way that you can put into action right now?
So the assessment, the various assessments tools, Strength Finders and Myers-Briggs and these others, and I've taken a few probably. Now that you mentioned strength, it reminded me that I had taken more than a couple.
See, case in point, you don't even remember.
No, I forget them all. I don't even know what.
But there's great information.
There is, yeah. What opportunity is there to guess, like from your email content?
What somebody's type is.
Yeah.
So there is, I can't remember the name of the technology, but there was a study done by Stanford University, and this was back in like 2015. This is not new, where they said, could we take the Big Five? The Big Five is like the psychology research that kind of combines all assessments. It's not about the assessments, but you can, if you know what the Big Five is, any assessment you look at, you can map it back to the Big Five. So it's like an underlying research, right? And they said, could we look at people's Facebook, social media, could we look at what people post out there online and just determine which characteristics they have? And they can. Like I can't remember the accuracy. It was like 99% accurate.
Wow.
Like it was so highly accurate. And so
it probably depends on how much content you get, right? Like I'm assuming that's a variable that would matter.
Yeah. There's actually a company out there that does this. They're called crystalknows.com, and they sell to sales teams, and they'll predict someone's DISC score and then help you understand, like, how do you need to pitch this person? How do you need to communicate to this person? Which is totally cool. There was also this company in England that used it called Cambridge Analytica. Does this ring any bells for you?
That's a familiar name.
Huge political drama because they predicted, like they used that information for how can you present ads to people in a way that will persuade them on which way they should vote.
Yeah.
And like big
a lot of backlash
debacle.
on that.
Yeah, exactly. Huge. And so we look at that and we say, we're not interested in playing any role in any of that because one, we sell to enterprise, GDPR, like privacy, data access, all of that kind of stuff is super important to us. We don't want to read your emails, and our customers don't want us to anyways.
Yeah,
but also we think with all that stuff, like you should have control over what people know about you and who has access to it. So no, we don't do that, and we won't do that.
I feel safer being in this room with you that you have acknowledged that consent actually matters when it comes to
it matters
stuff.
So much.
Yeah.
It's so important because psychology is pretty powerful, but also like it's your data, like you should know what's happening with it. So at every level of our product, consent is key. It has to be for us to actually be able to have the customers we have, but it's also like philosophically, we've built it that way before we even needed to, because that's just the right thing to do.
I guess there's lots of opportunity to do lots of exploitative or kind of, not so ethical approaches to things, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should.
People have always had the idea we could go B2C and, help marketing companies sell things. And we're like, why would we do that? We're trying to use this technology to help people be more human, to have more empathy for each other, to have more understanding of each other. I mean, think about it, Aaron. It's 2024. It's an election year. All of the people unable to understand each other in our society, it just levels up.
Is that what we're going to do this year again? Do we have to keep doing that?
But if you think about it, part of it's just human nature. It's tribalism. It's what's safe. It's easier to just understand something than to try to learn something new or try to, be open to the fact that maybe something you believe is there's new information out there that you should consider. That takes a lot of mental energy. It's just easier to block things out.
It's true.
And that's why we just drop 2-sentence tips, short and sweet and slow drips of learning where you can realize, oh my gosh, that person and this is at work. We don't get into politics, but that person at work that I thought was against me or never likes my ideas or whatever. It turns out they're just more analytical than I am. And they're going to help me actually think through the details I didn't naturally think about. That's not threatening. That's helpful.
It is a shame that we can't implement this tool in my family text thread. There's 10 of us, and we're all very friendly battles all the time. Very
you could get
bunch.
your family on.
Maybe we should create a little enterprise account.
Yeah.
That might make things, a little more civil at Thanksgiving and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What an interesting idea. You really nailed it there when you said it's just the 2-second or the 2-sentence, whatever. What that made me think about is Steve Jobs' speech about marketing and how I think it's like a 5-minute speech. I love this little talk he did. I don't have any opinions on him as a person in general or Apple. I'm not a big fanboy necessarily, but he said this one brilliant thing about how no matter how big your brand is, you only ever get this tiny fraction of an amount of attention from anybody.
Yeah.
Whether you're Nike or Apple or McDonald's or whatever else, you get super brief impressions. That's the only opportunity you get. And then he went on to talk about their marketing strategy, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But essentially what you nailed in this is that you just have, people have very limited bandwidth to attend all these things that are EQ and the ability to kind of discern what somebody, how somebody might make decisions or listen better or how you might connect with somebody. That is exhausting stuff for most people. You know, it's really demanding to pay attention to all these little nuances and then reflect on those things and then prepare for those things, right?
Right.
So you've just made this like tiny little soundbite for somebody so that they don't have to put as much effort into something that they might otherwise do if there were just more hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
Or more mental bandwidth.
Yeah. I have this 2x2 I draw all the time. My team is probably sick of it. But people think about, how do you develop as a human versus when you're productive? Like you need to be productive. You need to get your tasks done. You need to set revenue goals. You need to hit them. You need to like, you know, you've got all this productivity you need to do over here. And if you're going to really learn and develop, you need to hit the pause button on your productivity, stop, leave, go read for an hour, go take a course, go do a team building activity, go like, you know, just stop being productive, go actually develop yourself. But development doesn't happen in a silo. And I mean, I talked to learning leaders. The chief learning officer at Workday told me, yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? We know that the best way people learn is when they're working, when they're putting it into practice. But we take new managers, back to new managers, we take them out of work and we plop them in a course with only other managers. We teach them a lot of concepts. It's an information dump. It's a clean, sterile environment to learn all of this stuff. Just like your assessment experience, they'll maybe remember 1% of all that you put that effort into teaching them because the brain can't handle that much. And then we go, plop, put them back into the wild. Like, now you have your team. Now you have all your complicated different people. Like, can you remember all the concepts? Can you actually start to change behavior now? No, you totally can't. And people think, oh my gosh, then we failed. Like the manager feels like I failed at learning, or the learning and development or the talent development people think I failed at teaching them effectively, when really it's just like, it's not a spectrum. It's not, you either learn best by stopping or you like just don't learn at all so you can go and be productive. It's a 2x2. So if I usually am drawing it, right? It's a 2x2. It's like you actually want to be in that upper right quadrant of the 2x2 where you're being productive and you're developing, you're learning at the same time. And like I said, learning is just getting new information. Development is actually putting that information into action, right? And you can put it into action when you're in action, like when you're being productive.
Yeah, that's why, you know, exercises and breakout sessions and all those things are attempting to like apply learnings.
And they're saying, okay, now consider your scenario. I just taught you this information. Now apply it to your scenario. I've been in so many of those breakout rooms and people really want to apply these concepts. And they've been game changing to me because I remember something and I say, oh my gosh, that's right. This is how I've been managing this person wrong or whatever it is, right? And there you go. I learned one really helpful concept and I applied it and it changed everything. But I forgot 99% of everything else.
So what you've done is just taken this kind of like interpersonal body of learning. And instead of the breakout session in the class that's kind of sequestered away from real work, you're just injecting it into real work. That really, I didn't realize how brilliant your product was until just now. I
mean, I'd like to say that I realized it was that brilliant years ago as we were building it. But honestly, like this was a lot of learn as we go. Like we just knew there was a lot of power in assessments and that the delivery mechanism of them is broken and that work sucks. People are miserable. People are getting conflicts. They're going home tired. Like, and we knew that assessments had the right information to help with that human issue of fatigue and frustration and feeling like you're not reaching your potential and what's wrong with me and what's wrong with them. We just didn't know. We just knew technology could help bridge that gap somehow. And it turns out
Yeah.
It can bridge the gap in a lot of ways.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the fatigue, because the day I was listening to your TED talk about bringing being energized by work, right? That same day, I went to my son's first grade class and read a little book to his first grade class, right? And
What book was it?
It was something construction site,
Perfect.
sleep tight construction site or whatever. And so at the end of this book, I could almost recite the whole thing, but I forget the title. But at the end of this book, it says something to the effect of, "Oh, they were tired, but they were feeling proud." It's that kind of like,
Yeah.
you're whipped, but you did it. And
Yeah.
there's like there's a fun factor, there's a pride, there's an energy, a different kind of energy
Yep.
in having done a great job. And it occurred to me as I was putting those two, kind of experiences together, that a lot of that like fatigue and that drain that happens to you is from that mental energy that's necessary to interact with other people. It's the people friction. It's not the moving dirt from one place to the other or updating the spreadsheet. Those things do take energy. But
Well, and like we were talking about before we started recording, I asked you, how was your day today? And you said,
I was fired up. It was a great day. Really productive.
yeah.
Right?
And I asked you why, and all of the examples you gave is because of people interactions.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
So if you have positive people interactions, it's so good.
True.
If you have negative people interactions all day long, you just feel like everything is friction. Like, oh my gosh, I have to take this one to the purchasing department. And I know that Jim over there, he always, blah, blah, blah. And then like, I got to go over to Ahmad and like,
I thought I was good at this whole podcast stuff, but what a great setup that was. Good question.
thanks.
You really nailed my energy level at the end of the day. That's cool.
You hit it spot on. Like if things are going well, if you understand the dynamics of what's happening around you, and if you're doing your best work, you get so energized, and you do get tired, but it's a different kind of tired than when it's just friction all day. And it's confusion. You don't know why.
Yeah.
Why is this so hard? Why is that person against me? Why am I not as smart as them? Why? You just don't know. And then that is so draining. That's when you need to just like turn on Netflix and eat a TV dinner and just like,
Yeah, those two different kinds of tired. One is I earned my rest, and the other is anxious. And anxiety can come from work when you're experimenting and you don't know if you're productive. I've experienced that, where you're throwing shots into the wind. You don't know if they're working, whatever. You can get anxiety from that. But I would say more often the anxiety comes from not feeling the danger of not knowing, not feeling confident about your people interactions, right? Whether you're feeling threatened by people's view of you, or not feeling like you persuaded somebody you needed to, those kind of things. So what an interesting observation.
and I would say those are related. Like if you're trying to figure out how to do something, whether it's with a team of 2 or it's a team of 200, like, and you're not sure if the direction is right, the people can either amplify the opportunity in a good way, or they can amplify the unknowing and the worries and the friction and the, people impact all of that. And we've got a book coming out in like 3 weeks.
Okay.
And it's all about the fact that today in our knowledge-based economy, the thing that matters most, that makes the best job experiences, that makes the best places to work, that makes the most impactful work that you're most proud of, and that makes companies the most successful, the key differentiator is collaboration. What is the quality of collaboration that you experience and that your teams are experiencing and your whole organization is experiencing? That's the most important thing today because of a bunch of macroeconomic trends. It's also the hardest thing today because of a bunch of macro societal trends like politics, right? It's so hard today. And you can't really separate the ability to accomplish the hard skills, the ability to know what you're supposed to do, the ability to execute well on a goal, and the ability to work with the people around you. They're so intertwined today.
So I do executive search. Maybe the number one requests that I get from leaders when they're trying to hire a leader or a SME or whatever else, the one most often cited thing is they've just got to really know how to work with people and whatever. Yeah. Everybody's trying to avoid the cocky consultant character who's just good at a thing. Not that they aren't valuable in ways too, but more often than not, almost always, people I really want somebody who can bring people together, at almost every level. Yeah. Right? From writing code to executive leadership.
It's so critical. LinkedIn did a review of all their job postings and did some research on what are the skills that people are really looking for today. Number one is communication.
Yeah.
Ability to work with others.
But it's more than the words, right? It's
really so
about
much more
hearing,
than the words. Communication is not just about what you say. It's about what you hear. The number one rule of communication is know your audience. You can't know your audience if you're not listening.
One thing I was curious about is the state of the business and your role in it and how it's evolved since your founding.
Yep.
So what is the state of the business? 3 questions at once.
Which
Boom, boom, boom. So where do I start? What's the state of the business now? What's your role in it? And how has that changed since the beginning of the organization?
All right. So I have always overseen the product.
Okay.
And I've overseen more things than that I no longer oversee. Hallelujah.
Nice.
Like HR, customer success, finance. Darren and I kind of shared finance, legal, all that kind of fun stuff. And now I just, in October, a few months ago, I promoted somebody to oversee all of product and engineering. So design, all that kind of stuff. It used to all just individually report up to me. Now he oversees all of that.
Okay.
And I've taken on a lot more work in marketing because we've always struggled to explain what we do. And it just needed my time.
I'm a little savvy in this space. I mean, I've interacted in this world a little bit adjacent to it, right?
Yeah.
And it took me 25 minutes to figure out the value
of what we do.
It multiplied by 100 times just sitting here chatting with you for 20 minutes. So totally. I feel that pain.
We did a ton of work to, really just hone in on where's our niche, who's our key buyers, right? And really get to know them. What are their problems? What are their pain points? I know my niche now so well, right?
Okay, nice.
And so now all of that's starting to come out. We're launching a new homepage. We've got this book coming out. We're applying for speaking engagements everywhere. We've got our ABMs and our social campaigns, like all that kind of stuff is just like starting to get a lot tighter now, which is very rewarding. And of course, I've come to it with a product approach of, okay, what's our success metrics? And, what's our plans here, And I think that's been super helpful. I'm not a marketer.
You are now.
We will hopefully, if you like marketing and you have B2B SaaS experience, we will probably be hiring a marketing leader soon. I would really love to do that. And actually, to that point, state of the business, we're closing a round of funding right now.
Okay, nice.
Which feels so exciting because it's just impossible to raise right now. But last year, our business grew 80%. Wow. In a year when most SaaS businesses grew 8%. 8% was the private SaaS average growth rate last year. And we grew 10x that, right?
Wow.
So that speaks volumes to our ability to raise capital right now and actually be able to continue growing, which feels like a huge blessing. I mean, I know why it is. I know what we implemented to get there. I know it has a lot actually to do with a new contract model that we put into place, blah, 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 blah. I know why we were successful, but it still feels like a gift.
So how has your joy on the job, if you will, or your what's changed the most for you? And how long has it been, by the way, since you guys started?
So Darren and I have been working on it full time for 7 years now.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed since you're wearing 100 hats and now you've got focus on a few critical things.
I would say this is the most joyful it's been for me. I mean, it's ironic. I knew it was ironic the whole time. We're building a company that's all about know your strengths and work to your strengths. And I knew my strengths. And I knew I wasn't working to them because I just had to do what I had to do.
That's the nature of a tiny business, right?
It's the nature of, starting something new. And a lot of things that even like when we could afford to hire someone in it, there's something about what only the founder can bring in certain areas. And that's why I'm in marketing now is because there's a level of just, I don't know what it is. I really don't know what it is, but I know that I had to step in and bring the founder's like strong opinion, intuition. People talk about like, oh, the founder just like has this magical intuition. And I'm like, founders are flawed humans. I don't know why people glorify founders, but in this case, I realized like, oh, there really is something to like the vision of why we started the business and the ability to read between the lines and really understand not only what people are asking for, but also what's happening in market trends. And like, I just have so much intuition built up from talking to everyone, investors, customers, end users, buyers over 7 years. I've talked to thousands, right? And I just needed to step in and do that. But I would also still say, the reason why I'm saying I'd love to hire marketing leaders is because there's still a level of I'm doing things that I know I'm not great at.
Right.
And I'd love to delegate those.
Yeah, you're entering a war with weapons and not even knowing what the caliber of weapons are that you could utilize, right? Like,
Totally.
it's not magic, but there is something uniquely deep about that intuition you're talking about. It's a lot like the way we experience AI, and we feel like it's this magical thing. It's just code. You know, and it's just code and data, right? And it's just there are more layers and more complexity to it.
Large language model. It's just very large.
It's just a large part, right?
It's got a lot of connection points.
But that's true for you. You've been at this for 7 years, and you started with a vision. Yeah, that's exactly right. And you kind of multiply that over all those. There's a lot of different points where your thoughts may go based on your kind of vast experience doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Yeah,
intuition is not just having some magical understanding of things. It is having a lot of information that is connecting in a way you can't explain, but it's all like, you know, when you're sensing, which is the opposite of intuition, you can think of all the individual data points. Intuition is just, I can't explain all the data points, but they're in there, right?
Yeah. What's next for you guys? What's like, I know you're focused on marketing, messaging, kind of, what's the next big thing? Where do you want to be in the next year or two?
So the next big thing is, like I said, our real secret sauce is just understanding what is your context and what do you need to know right now in a way that you can put it into action, right? That's the tech we have built. And so our next steps is, well, what else can we put into that? Okay, so we can do assessments. Check, we're crushing that. We're doing excellent at that. So what other learning information can we start to take in so that we can help people truly develop in the flow of their work?
Are you guys engaged in any way in like employee feedback tools or resources? Like I was just thinking like annual performance reviews, which I'm not a big fan of annual performance reviews, but whatever iteration they are, feedback and communication is that an adjacent space that is?
It is. Okay. Yeah. So there's 2 adjacent spaces to us. One is like human resources information systems, HRISs, right? So that's your performance reviews, that's your employee engagement surveys, that's your like your reporting structure, your tenure on the team, like all of that kind of information. And then the other one over here is LMS, learning systems. So like what's the content that's being given to people, as well as trainings. So like we have a partnership with Ken Blanchard with the Blanchard SL2. We have partnerships with like, I mean, if you think of like Stephen Covey, like StrengthsFinder, like there's so many other companies out there that put out really good, or sorry, I said StrengthsFinder, I meant Gallup. Gallup owns StrengthsFinder.
Gallup, yeah.
They put out great leadership development and management content and, you know, self-management content, all of that kind of stuff. So we've got partnerships with these folks. And now it's a question of how do we just bring all of this data together? How do we bring in the data from Workday as well as the information from a Blanchard program and use that to understand, okay, this person's a new manager and they got this training, so they understand this concept, and this is their psychology profile, and this is their new direct report psychology profile. Here's probably what they need to know. Oh, and here's their meeting agenda. Here's what the calendar is about, and here's the dynamic of all the other people in the room. Like, how can we take all that data and just be like, what you need to know?
Put it right onto my Google Glasses or whatever.
Exactly right.
I get in line behind you at the coffee place and like, hey, Kirsten, whatever.
Yeah.
The Borg.
I mean, well, and I get how that can sound, that can start to sound a little Big Brotherish, but back to our conversation earlier, we can't make you do anything. And this information actually can't really be used to manipulate you because there are certain things we won't understand about your context, your proprietary company information, you know, like all that kind of stuff. It's just trying to help people understand where there is tension, whether that tension feels relational, it feels like it's related to a process, it feels like it's because of, you know, you're new on the job. Like there's a lot of things that can cause tension at work. What is the information you need to know right now to actually be successful? Be successful in that relationship, in that goal, in your next performance review? How can we help people truly do their best work, and not just the work that's going to get them paid more, but the work that's going to leave them energized at the end of the day.
If you're trying to connect with somebody, it's not an exploit or a manipulation to better connect and communicate, right? Like I think about, love languages or the like, who wouldn't want to be somebody to attempt connecting with them in a way that meant the most to them, right? I've been reading. I don't really read books. I listen to them, but I was reading Persuasion. I forget the name.
Cialdini,
yeah.
Yes.
Great book. And so I was reading this piece, I was listening to it while I was on a walk, about reciprocation, the rule, and how at some point, and to some degree, when people discern that you're trying to get an advantage or you're trying to get something in return, it actually has the opposite effect, right?
Yeah.
So I 100% agree that like you can't, it's difficult to use the way that somebody wants to connect with you in a way that manipulates them. I don't want to say you can't, because anything could be done, but it's difficult because at some point, somewhere along the way, somebody's going to find themselves feeling regret about something they agreed to, and they're going to notice that you're particularly attuned to your drivers, right? And that stuff will backfire, right? But in the meantime, or otherwise, while I'm talking to you in a language that makes most sense to you, I'm communicating with nuance, or I'm connecting at a time and place or around subjects that we share and genuinely have in common. And it leads to actual, real, better connection, whether that's to improve performance or to, get that customer signed up or whatever else, or, love languages, right? Like you get better connections when you use these tools and resources or whatever. And I consent, like whoever wants to connect with me in a better way by learning me,
I would love it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like I consent to whatever that is, right? If you're not doing that, I'm probably going to smell it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some point, I'm probably, maybe not in one transaction, but
well, and that gets
we're
back
learning
to,
creatures, right?
That gets back to you control your data, right? Like you choose who gets it.
Yeah. Like, why do I keep seeing these ads? You know what I mean? We notice that. Like,
Oh my gosh.
You say hi to your FBI agent when you turn your phone on because it like pops something up that you were just talking about or whatever. Like, we all feel a little irked by that. You know?
Oh my gosh. I just went to a website today. It's for a conference out of a company that's like from somewhere in Europe. I can't remember. I think UK. Which I guess is not part of Europe anymore, whatever. And they, GDPR is huge over there. Huge. So watching your cookies, like all that kind of stuff. You get to a website and it's like, do you accept that we track your cookies or whatever they call it? And I said, I didn't want to accept it. And it was like, click here to learn more. The only option was like accept, right? And I was like, no, I don't want to. And then it was like learn more, click learn more. And it was like adjust your settings. So the only option was to accept. Like I went through like 3 layers and the only option all over was to accept. I was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
I can't stand that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm going to get retargeted ads.
Yeah, that's right.
I was like, you're in the UK. Why are you're supposed to be so compliant.
Yeah, would you like to, help us more relevant to you, blah, blah, blah. And then all you get is this retargeted stuff. It's always listening,
but those
triangulating data against cell phones that are near yours and all this stuff. It irks you, right? It doesn't feel more relevant. No. It feels imposing.
It feels obnoxious. It feels like more spam, more information I don't need, more, so yeah, I one of the things I'm really passionate about is making things truly relevant to you or else it's not going to help you, right? And also making it short and sweet. I'm so passionate about that because I don't like technology. I turn off my notifications all the time. I'm always behind on my email. I'm always behind on my text messages and I'm never checking my voicemail because I just get I'm inundated. You know what I mean? And so the important stuff gets lost all the time. So the way that we've built our product from the ground up has always come back to that. Is it helpful and relevant to this person? And is it short and sweet? It just has to be. Yeah. Because people are inundated.
It has to be right and it has to be right on time, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned people being inundated. It reminded me of a question I was going to ask earlier about the volume of content that you could potentially enable somebody with. It's got to be so vast that somehow you have to decide that 2 or 3 seconds of attention that somebody's going to give to it, right?
Exactly.
That's going to be difficult. How do you do that?
Well, The most important thing is that it's accurate. We've had an academic research done by actually a group of people across the globe who researched coaching. They came and they researched our automated coaching, and they did long form interviews with people who've gotten human coaching and automated coaching, and what's the difference, what's the value, and like every single person said what mattered was that it was accurate. If it was accurate, they, like you mentioned, like a feeling of big brother, or like, oh my gosh, is this manipulative? Or, people, it's very common for people to have those worries, especially because a lot of people have been manipulated. They've been burned.
Right. You get hypersensitive to that.
Yeah. Like that's why, you should be able to control your data, right? But also, once they get their first tip and it is so spot on for them, they feel known. They understand themselves better. They trust it. Like it immediately builds trust. But if you're getting tips that are like, okay, this sounds like a horoscope, then it's like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. You lose people, right?
Just try to be you.
You do you, YOLO. Because that's not actually helpful to somebody. Yeah. That's generic, right? So the accuracy is just so critical to it. So you ask, like, how do we actually know what to send to somebody? As long as it is true to who they are, like innately, or it helps them understand themselves better, it helps them understand somebody else better. That in and of itself goes miles and miles for people. But then, of course, we want to do better than that. We don't want to just send something that's accurate. We want to send something that's timely. We want to understand, who are you meeting with? And what's the dynamic of the people in that room? How do we condense all of that information into one, right? And then you can just get infinite with this stuff. And then it really comes down to, well, where are they interacting? What are they asking for when they're searching for something in the product? Because you can just type in, like, how do I give Aaron feedback without causing conflict? Or why do I feel like Aaron's nitpicking me? Or, whatever it is. Or how do I motivate Aaron? Or like, man, Aaron's crushing it. What can I do to celebrate him well? Like, because different people feel celebrated in different ways. Love languages, right? We can then crunch all of that information. Plus, like I said, your HRIS information, or what courses have you been taking? There's unlimited information. And technology today can crunch that so well.
So you're in this whole, business of largely to enable leaders to connect better with their teams and
individuals to connect with each other.
With one another. Yeah. How has that impacted you as a leader over the last few years?
I mean, in a ton of ways. I manage people who are so different than me. And even having built this company and like evangelizing these concepts all day, it is hard to lead people who you just don't understand. Where you're like, well, I think this is fun, and you don't. Right. You think this is fun, and I don't know how to set up the project well for you that way, right? Like, it's always a learning curve. And I think it's a gift to me that I understand the concept of trying to understand that. Like, I know I always need to be learning.
Do you find that it makes you, being so hyper aware of the difference in how people are energized by one another or connect with one another, do you feel like that gives you more pause than the average leader? Like, does it make you stop and think and in ways that most leaders are more
like worried about making a mistake?
Yeah. And how much does it ever lend to overthinking, or what's your experience with that like?
So I have been worried about making mistakes, especially like when I started leading the marketing team and like really getting more involved with them a few months ago. I just noticed it. I noticed that the way I set a goal, they did not understand at all. And I was stressing them out. I mean, it was palpable, and I was like, come on, guys, let's dream big. And they were like, what the does dream mean? Like,
energy didn't clarify. It just multiplied the confusion.
It just was like compounding. Yeah. And like just churning through meetings, trying to like get aligned with each other. And I know that just showing people you care and just truly acting on, I want to understand better, speaks volumes. But I also could tell like we were missing, I was missing them. And so I brought in one of our folks who she's like an internal coach. Where we're lucky. We live in this space.
Right.
And I was like, Peggy, can you lead a session with us? And she joined us for like 90 minutes and she she knew all of our data, right? And she starts asking, Kirsten, what's the goal? I forget what I said the goal is. I was like, hey, we've got to be trying new things because we keep not hitting our numbers in the way that we know we are capable of. And we have failed to communicate well to the market this brand new thing we're doing. We're marketing like everybody else, but we're doing something totally different. Like we've got to dream big and we've got to accomplish new things. And Peggy was like, great. Katie, what do you think the goal is? And Katie was like, I think the goal is this revenue number. And then somebody else on the team, and Peggy goes, that's right, Kirsten, you don't know how to communicate a goal to this team.
Wow.
Like they need more structure. They need a project plan. They need whatever. No, I was like, hallelujah. Okay. Schultz, you're really good at making a project plan. Schultz, you're now going to help us do this. You know what I mean? Like it was just so clarifying okay, these are the strengths that this team needs from leadership, but I don't know how to do those things. I can try and fail because it's truly just not how my brain works. So I can give an opportunity to somebody else, right? And it's not extra work. It's an honor because it's leadership growth, right? I think in my past, I would worry like I have to be all things to all people, and I would just churn. I would just like hit my head on the brick wall, and I was bleeding all down my face, and I was like, I'm going to hit the wall harder, right? We think that we have to be the ones to solve everything, but the best leaders really just ask the right questions and get out of people's way. Like, yes, set clear direction, but the way I was setting direction wasn't working, so I worked with them on, well, how do we put this into a number then? How do we put this into a, whatever it is? And we're running fast in the same direction now.
Good.
Because I'm speaking more Chinese to the, like, you know what I mean?
Right. You're speaking that second language, right?
Yeah.
Where do you fall on the kind of the balance between, optimizing work into the hands of people who are most motivated or energized by it versus just grit and the necessity of working hard and pushing through and getting it done? And what's your attitude toward that balance, particularly as it applies to a startup?
Do you mean like sometimes you just got to do the thing you got to do versus like, I really want to make you always feel good about the thing you have to do.
Right.
No, I think that's very real. And gosh, how do we balance? I mean, I think everybody has to accept that, right? We've had a couple of employees who've really been like, hey, I thought this place was all about doing your best work, because that's our mission statement, unleash people to do their best work. And like, I don't feel like doing that thing. We're like,
I really don't like email.
That's not what that means. I hate email. I still check it, right? Once every month.
You have to have some standard, right?
But I think people who've worked in a couple of different places, they always understand, like, okay, there's things that have to get done so that I can do my best work, right? I think people get that. I don't think you get into this like victimization enablement, like, I just only want to do what I want to do, and if anything else, then you're being a bad boss. People don't really think that way.
Yeah.
People want to be a part of something big, and they understand that hard work is hard sometimes, but they also want to be like, I think actually I say they want to be. I think a lot of people don't know how to articulate this, but everyone knows that feeling when you're good at something and you crush it.
Yeah.
And so people want to be given as much of that as possible, right?
Yeah.
And then with it, sometimes you gotta, manage the benefits for your company.
Right. Somebody has to run payroll, right?
Yeah.
You went right where I was going with that, because it's, there's, when work is dumped on you, it's probably work you're not particularly proud of, work you don't feel good at, or work you don't see the value in. But when it is one of those things, it's you see clearly how it's valuable. You enjoy doing it because you're good at it, right? It doesn't feel like getting dumped on. It feels like a way to show off, right? Or it feels like a way to kind of accomplish and have that like tired at the end of the day because I know I did something
in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I think of like the early days when I would spend hours on the phone with the IRS because apparently we filed our
Were you listening
Form
this week?
T9. No, I was
just doing some tax stuff. Oh my God.
The amount of hold music I've listened to, right? And like miserable. Just those are miserable experiences. But I knew what I was aiming for ultimately, and it was worth it, right? it was worth it. It still is worth it. It feels more and more worth it the more success we get, right? When I think about hiring, I think there's 3 things that are critical. The right past experience, which is actually, I would say, the least important, unless you're hiring a leader. Then it's pretty critical that they know what to do, right? They have to have ownership. And by ownership, that's like, I'll just jump in and I'll figure it out, right? Like, I can do that. And some people, that one's kind of hard to explain because like you can have people who are like, sure, I'll do anything, and they'll do a bad job at it. Like there's critical thinking that has to be involved. There's a level of a commitment to excellence that's critical for that. But there's also like some people really do best when there are hard lines around their job description. Boundaries create clarity for people. So like my marketing team, they weren't not owning it by wanting me to give them a good goal in their language, not mine, right? They just needed that. But they still are people who like go above and beyond, take on whatever task. Like they have a high level of ownership. So ownership for different people looks different ways. And I think a lot of times, especially in startup founders can really judge people who need clarity as being lazy. Stop it, you startup founders. That's not fair because you actually need those people. You need people who have a higher bar of excellence.
They're
in
the
their
I's and
craft.
T's. I mean, they're the ones that are executing the details. And
You need those people. You don't need a army of them in the early days, but
they're probably not one of the founders. Right?
No.
Right.
And they're often going to feel left out when they're the first few of those that are hired, but like love those people. They are so critical. So ownership, so right experience, ownership, and then commitment to the vision and the mission. Like, do they just get it? Do they love where you're headed? And do they just get it? And all of those things, some level of them, the founder is really responsible for. Like and then like as it grows, the managers, the directors, the VPs like become really responsible for like casting those things. Like they say vision leaks, right? Like you have to reinforce, you have to cast, you have to all of that kind of stuff. And you have to do it into the way your people are wired. But like we say, I mean, a lot of our people did not come to us with the right past experience, the first one of those 3, but they had a high level of ownership and they loved our mission and vision and they just get it. And so you can get out of their ways. They understand the vision of where we're headed and they're like going to step in and get shit done. You can get out of their way. They'll learn it. They're so motivated to learn on the job.
Yeah, that's a really empowering perspective as an executive. And I think the kind of mandate that everybody wants to work under is like, tell me clearly where we're going, give me the resources that I need to do it, and then cheer me on and support me as I'm making it happen, right? I feel like that's the boss everybody wants to work for.
Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes to be exactly that all the time, but that sounds good.
I'm the perfect model.
That's right.
I wish. I try.
So speaking of challenges, I'll throw one more question at you before we wrap this up. What's your biggest threat and what's your kind of plan to get through it?
I think our biggest threat is distractions. We are doing something brand new. The ability to know your context and what this person needs to know and then deliver them the short, actionable, right information they need right when they need it. That's what we need to stay focused on as a business. And that is also what we need to market. We need to be marketing better to our buyers what is truly valuable about what we do. We've always marketed human skills. And I care so much about human skills. Most of this conversation has been about EQ and human skills, right? Like I care so much about it. But so many people are doing so many things to that. We need to hone in on what exactly is it that's different about us. What's different about us is we're not going to give you information overload. We're using true psychology and true academic research to know what actually is the way people truly develop versus learn. And how do we change lives that way, right? So we have to get better at marketing that. We have to spread that message farther. We have to not get distracted by fun little opportunities to veer back into like, we're all about leadership because leadership is so matters. It so matters so much, but so many people talk about that. What's unique about us? How can we not get watered down by a bunch of distractions? And then in our business opportunities, like there's so many opportunities.
Right.
There's so many. And there's every single one of our employees every day has opportunities to get distracted in 10 different ways. You compound that. Like that's millions of distraction opportunities every day, right? And this is true for every business, but I feel like it's particularly critical for our business at this point where we are. And yeah, I think my job has basically become go on repeat. Like have my 5 talking points and say them all day, every day.
Yeah. Well, you're driving focus, both in your product and in your execution of your business process, right?
And in our market. Our market needs education. We are marketing to a $350 billion a year market. L&D is learning and development, is a $350 billion a year market that is just rinse and repeat, same solutions over and over. I talked to the woman who built up HR for all of Europe and Asia when Facebook was expanding that away. And she said, we thought that e-learning was going to be the savior. It was democratizing access for people to have any learning they needed to know whenever they needed it. It's at their fingertips. And lo and behold, we're so disappointed in engagement. People aren't actually using it. And I'm like, of course they're not. It's 2-hour courses. Even if it's 30-minute courses, you got to go in there. You got to keyword search. You got to search through 17 options. You got to choose. You got to preview this one and that one.
That might have been cool. Right.
Yeah, it's like, who has time for that? Your people are ask any employee, how do you feel at work? I'm stressed. Why are you stressed? I have so much to do. Like,
right. Give me a 2-hour class.
I know, exactly.
Add on to my 8-hour day,
exactly. And I'm like, I can't believe the market hasn't seen this. But what's beautiful is like, especially with LLM advancements and generative AI advancements that have just become available to everyone, you can solve this problem. It's actually, it's actually very complicated, but it's quite simple what's needed to be done. Yeah. It's complicated to connect those 5 million data points to be like, here's the 2 sentences you need. Like, that's not easy, but it's possible. So we just need to be focused on educating the market on that and getting our people to stay focused on that instead of like, oh my gosh, there's a new assessment that popped up. It's so interesting. Maybe we should partner with them, or you know what I mean? Like, there's so many opportunities.
Brevity is a behemoth. Right. It takes a lot of complexity to get that simplicity down, right?
The hardest thing is to be simple.
Good luck keeping your stakeholders focused.
I feel very confident we're doing a great job and we can do it. I just know it's so hard. It's a constant focus. You can never repeat yourself too much.
Yeah, true. Well, Kirsten, thank you very much for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.